So we are down to the bottom of Kuf Amud Aleph. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, and Halacha Klok Rabbi Yehuda, Klok Rabbi Yossi, Ela Paras Mapa Mukadesh. So according to Rabbi Yossi, we'll start with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to stop, bench. If you're continuing your Suda, you stop and you bench. You take the Suda, the table away, you bench. The Siluk Shulchan means to bench, and then you have to make Kiddush, make a new Motzi, completely, totally new Suda. According to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yossi, for carrot, you.
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt so early, but is the Siluk HaShulchan, is that, how do we know that that's automatically benching? Or do we know that?
The Rishonim will say that.
Because the Rashbam doesn't say, doesn't say it anywhere.
It does say it actually, not here. He says it.
Right. The Rashbam doesn't say it anywhere that I could find.
Let's see here.
I think the Rif says it. No, that's what he said.
No, that was Hamotzi.
That's Hamotzi.
Is a Rashbam. There is another Rashbam who does say it. Tosfos says it explicitly, but the Rashbam says it as well. Not here. It's Rashbam later on.
Hamotzi either anyway.
Let's see if we can find it now.
Right. So said we believe it. Let's go. Okay, we didn't mean to share the shear. We'll get there.
Yeah, because there is a Rashbam who says it later on, and she just reviewed it. You have to look for it where it was. And Tosfos says it also as well. And the Rishonim will speak this out. That's the implicit in Siluk HaShulchan is benching. So to make it completely into Suda, and Rabbi Yossi holds for carrot, you can keep on eating it till the end, and make Kiddush at the end, which Tosfos speaks out that you have to say Kiddush Makam Suda by making the Kiddush at the end. So those are the two extremes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda.
Does everyone necessarily hold it? That the Siluk HaShulchan?
Sorry?
Does everyone necessarily hold that the Siluk HaShulchan means Berachas Hamazon, or
I haven't seen anybody say differently yet. And any Rishon that spoke about it, that does speak about it, I've seen has mentioned that it's benching.
So, I guess I'll ask when we do the rush, because I thought it was mashma differently.
Okay. So, and then comes Shmuel in the middle, which if you say it doesn't mean benching, then basically Shmuel would end up being Rabbi Yehuda. And nobody says that, right? So the shal is who does Shmuel hold like? That's the shal over here, which we'll see that it's not more. It's a lot bigger question. Who does he hold like? It's not just a technical question of what does he hold like, but based on what you say that he holds like, you might come out with a very different nafkamina, a very different shot in Shmuel in this din of Poras Papa Mukadesh. So we also saw the Rashbam. The Rashbam says that it's basically he holds like Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara already paskin halacha Rabbi Yossi, and it's a chumrah in Rabbi Yossi. It's machmer al-atzmai, says the Rashbam. So if somebody wanted to go ahead and make kiddush at the very end of the meal, then that wouldn't be a problem according to the Rashbam. Just his machmer al-atzmai. The Rashbam later on says a little bit more. Like he wants to say Rashbam in Kuf Beis Amud Beis says in the top of Kuf Beis Amud Beis says Mod Rabbi Yossi the Kol Sheken the Shaper Tzvei. The Rabbi Yossi's moda that for sure even Rabbi Yossi himself it says you're allowed to keep on eating and make kiddush at the end. Rabbi Yossi himself is moda that Kol Sheken the Shaper Tzvei. It's for sure better to stop and make kiddush and then continue on. So it's a little bit of a steer than the Rashbam. I say a little bit because both Rashbams are holding that the halacha is still like Rabbi Yossi. The question is it Shmuel's chumrah on himself, the local Rabbi Yossi, or even Rabbi Yossi himself committed to it, or Shmuel held that he held within the Shmuel with Rabbi Yossi, the Rabbi Yossi himself would hold that way. It's a little bit of a stira, but the Ikar Adin, the main mahalach in the Rashbam is that it's a chumrah or an adifus or a zahirus or a some kind of a better kiyum according to Rabbi Yossi. That's Rashbam's shita. Now Tosas disagrees and says, to Nidchak and all the many other Rishonim all say that it's going like a shitas acherim in the Yerushalmi. So it's not Rabbi Huda, it's not Rabbi Yossi, it's a third shita. So what's the nafkamina? It's a third shita. So I think that Tosas is maramis to the nafkamina. But Tosas says that there's a question. Once you say it's a third shita, so now who do you paskin like? The Gemara already explicitly said you paskin like we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Now comes along Shmuel and says something according to a third opinion. So what makes that better than Rabbi Yossi to paskin this way? So Tosas says that the raya that we should paskin this way is because Rav Nami Savar Lakaman Kishmuel, Kamer Shabbos Kava Nafsha. He brings a raya that it's not just Shmuel, but it's also Rav. We have a combination of Rav and Shmuel, then for sure we're going to paskin like this halacha of Paras Mapa Mukadish. That sounds like a little bit, sort of just a shalom of psak halacha, not that significant. I mean, it's significant how we paskin, but as far as the lumdus, you don't really see that much until you take a good look at that sugi and Kufam and Amar Aleph, what Rav says over there. When Rav says this din of Shabbos Kava Nafsha and Kufam Amar Aleph, the Tosas is quoting. So there the halacha is, the Maisa was like this. Over there, you take a look at that Maisa, and he says, the Gemara says that Rav Chananya Bar Shalmiya Bar Tamidi de Rav Hayi Yasvi Sudasa. So you have the Tamidi Rav are sitting and eating a Suda in Erev Shabbos. The Koyala Rav Nuna Saba. Rav Nuna was the Balabas. Amar Le'ezil Chazi Im Kadesh Yomas. They said to him, go and see if it's already become dark. It's already become Shabbos. Nafsik v'nikveh l'Shabsa. We should stop and take the table away and be kovea suda l'Shabbos. Amar lo tzrichisu. You don't need to do that. You don't need to have been solid for shulchan to be kovea for Shabbos. Shabbos kava nafsha. Because Shabbos is kovea itself. When Shabbos comes in, the Shabbos kovea itself. Damar Rav kishem sheh Shabbos kavas l'maiser kach Shabbos kavas l'kiddush. Just like Shabbos turns a nechilas aroy into a nechilas kava, so that's something that should generally be pater from meiser because it's still a nechilas aroy. It's still out in the Sada and you need a Nechilas Aroy, it would be pater from Meiser. But when Shabbos comes in, it's Kaveh, the Chashivas of the Achila to make it Chayiv and Meiser. Who din is Kaveh the Gabe Etzem Din Shabbos for Kiddush. You can just make Kiddush without doing a Silika Shulchan. So now the Rashbam over there says, Rashbam explains what we just said, that you don't have to be mafsik to be okra the shulchan, to be mavdil between Sudas Chol and Sudas Shabbos. The Shabbos covers l'nafshel l'sudasa. The ma'achar sheyoseres aleinu lechol mi'ata below kiddush. Since Shabbos asers for us makes it aser to eat without kiddush, ein l'cha hefsek gadol mizeh. There's no greater hefsek than that. Mi'atzma Sudas Shabbos. That because of the Isser that there is to eat without Kiddush, that itself separates Shabbos, the Suda Shabbos from the Suda's Chol. But Dailachem are priests Mappa and Kiddush. So for that it's enough just to be Paras Mappa and Mekadesh. Okay, that's all we need really from the Rashbam over there. So the Rashbam over there clearly says that the Shita of Rav, the Shabbos Kavas Atzma, is holding that when Shabbos comes in, that there's an Isser to eat. It's not a nice thing to make Kiddush. It's not just a nice thing to do, a Chumrah or a Hitter or whatever. It's an Isser. It's mamash an Isser. So according to the Rashbam, that Shmuel is the dinner priestess Mappa and our sugya. Of course, it happens to be the same words over there and by us, Paras Mapa Mukadesh, but according to the Rashbam, it's two very, very different sugyas. Our sugya of Paras Mapa Mukadesh and Shmuel is a chomer and Rabbi Yossi, where Me'ikra Din, there's no Isser to eat at all. You can continue eating all the way through and make Kiddush at the end. Whereas according to Rav, over here, there's a real Isser. In a sense, it's similar to Rabbi Yehuda in a way that there's a real Isser and there's a real Din to make, to stop and make Kiddush. The only difference between Rabbi Yehuda and over here will be that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to actually bench, like the Rishonim say, you know, Silka Shulchan Ikra Din, what Tosa speaks out. And over here, he says it's enough to do Paras Mapa Mukadesh because Shabbos Kabbalah Atzma, Kabbalah Nafsha. So according to Rashbam, there's no comparison at all between this sugya. There would not be any raya that Paskin like Shmuel, as far from our perspective. That's Shmuel, if that was the question. Tosas that says brings a raya that we Paskin Paras Mapa Mukadesh from Rav. So it's not a raya to Shmuel. It's not a raya to the Psak of Shmuel, which is a chumrah. It's a whole, unless Tosas learns that Shmuel's din is Me'ikar Din. There's also Me'ikar Din. There's an Isser. So that's what Tosas Megala by bringing a raya that we're paskening like Shmuel from Rav. Tosas Megala Das that he holds that Rav and Shmuel are the same din. And Shmuel is not just a chumrah aliba to Rabbi Yossi. So that's what Tosas means to say that it's a third shita. That's a whole another shita, not like Rabbi Yehuda, is that it's not a chumrah Rabbi Yossi. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's Me'ikar Din. You're chayav to do it. You're mechuyav. Shabbos Kabbalah Atzma. It's koveya. There's an Isra Achila now to continue to eat without Kiddush. So Tosas is not just being cholik on who Shmuel holds like and how it paskin. Tosas is being cholik on the whole Yisod of the Rashbam was Pshat and Shmuel altogether.
And how does the Rashbam understand that sugya of Shmuel? He's saying that because
Shmuel
Shmuel of Rav, because who would Rav hold like according to the Rashbam? Because the Rashbam it seems like the Rashbam rejected the Yerushalmi. He doesn't bring the Chachamim. So if he's not taking that third shita of the Chachamim, so he had to answer Shmuel the Amar Kaman. So he would have to answer the same thing by Rav also. Rav the Amar Kaman. Who does he hold like? Is he like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Yossi? Because Rabbi Yehuda, it's mashma requires a kiras shulchan mamish. Like he has to actually remove the table. By Rav, it seems that they didn't have to do akiras shulchan. The way the Rashbam was explaining, he said the nafsik the akiras shulchan, and then they said we'll go. Oh, but it's just the Shabbos is kova nafsha, so we don't have to do it. Paras Mapa. What was the point of that, according to Rashbam?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I would say that like the Gemara says in Ksuvas, many places, Rav Tana Polig. Rav is allowed to have his own shita.
Why can we say like that? I think we're muted. No? Why can we say that Rav does hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Because he makes a very big deal about the fact that when Shabbos Kabbalah Nafsha Ein Lecha, Havdalah Gedolah Mizu, and he also says on Kufam and Aleph, he says that it's that the Paras Mapa is Ke'ein Silak HaShulchan. Here he's saying that you have the fact that Shabbos came in. Plus, you have the mappa. Maybe he just holds it. In this case, that's Rabbi Yehuda would say that's enough. You don't need that kiras hashulchan because you have to do something visual or something physical. But l'maisi, you have Shabbos. It's making that division.
Just because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to actually bench.
Well, that was partially my question. That was because I mean, who said maybe the Rashbam holds over here? You also have to bench.
That he doesn't say though, and forget that.
Doesn't say it on Kufam and Aleph either.
The other Rishonim will speak it out in Rabbi Yehuda. That's precisely why it's a third shita. It's that is the third shita. That's in that way it's cholok from Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda saying you need mamish shulchan. Like they were saying the Chorah we have to salach shulchan. They were, I guess, thinking we have to be choshev shitas from Yehuda. He said you don't need to do that. It's Shabbos Kavod Nafsha. So that kufa will be that third shita, which Yehuda does require real siluk shulchan, and it's not daiva pierces mappa, and at least what Tosa says in the Rashbam, where as soon as I find it, holds that you actually do have to bench. So, and that way it's different.
Rabbi, the same question I think still stands though, of like, even if we say Rav Tano Palig, so then the question would be then why doesn't the Rashbam just answer that Shmuel holds like Rav? Which is basically the same question of like, why does the Rashbam not say like Tosfos that it's Shitas Chachamim? It seems very obvious, like the way Tosfos learns it. If you take that Yerushalmi, that there is a third Shita, it's a real Shita of Tanaim, and they can argue on Rabbi Yossi and on Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So okay, that was one lishna. There's another lashon. It was Rav Avhu, and who says that we hold like Rabbi Yochanan, that the lishna that says it was Rabbi Yochanan. Like Tosfos has a really, really good shot. And it seems like the Rashbam, for some reason, did not want to say like Tosfos. He wanted to specifically say that there wasn't this third Shita. Because I'm just trying to understand like why he does not go like Tosfos.
Why doesn't it hold like, okay, why it doesn't go like Tosfos? First of all, just technically speaking, you can never say that when there's Machlokas Tanoim and Rav Tana Polig, you can never say that like Shmuel holds like Rav as a Machlokas Tanoim, because Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan did not hold that Rav was Tana Polig. That's why they were Cholikanim. They're Amoraim and they're Cholikanim. It says that in Ksuvas. It was like we take on Rav Tana Polig, but they didn't. That's why they're Bali Plukta on Rav. So the same generation, they held that he was an Amor, they could be Cholikanim. But
You still have the Chachamim of the Yerushalmi.
Yeah, so why the response wasn't York to that? I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have really an answer for that. It's a good question. I don't really know. Just somehow before he held that Shmuel the lashon of the Gemara Kufay. It's possible that I mean, the Rashban for sure held that what the Gemara Paskin in our sugya like Rabbi Yossi, so halacha Rabbi Yossi. So then and Shmuel is samach to that. So without coming along and saying something different with that to be okra that psak, then this I guess he understood as Pashup shot in the sugya that Shmuel as a continuation of our sugya never spoke out that I'm cholik on your psak, and halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. Since Shmuel is juxtaposed to our sugya, we would have to some kind of illusion that I'm you passing like him, but I disagree that we passing like somebody else, like a third shita. The fact that they didn't say that is more mashma that Shmuel held like Rabbi Yossi, is going along with in line with the psak like Rabbi Yossi, the previous psak, and just adding a tosefus or a hitter to that psak. I guess we could say that besides Pashup shot in the Rashban why he didn't. Except that Tosfos suddenly we're throwing in the third shita without mentioning it, without saying a word about what we just passed in a few lines ago, like Rabbi Yossi. In that way, Tosfos is a little bit dochak, I guess. Okay. So now, I think that we have this now. We have this major machlokes between the Rashbam and Tosfos, whether Rabbi Yossi is like Shmuel's din, Parsha Makadosh, is a libud Rabbi Yossi, and therefore there really is no isser at all to continue eating without making kiddush. You're allowed to keep on eating and just make kiddush at the end, but it's a hitter to do it. There's for sure no isser. There's no shalom isser. Whereas according to Tosfos, there is a shalom isser over here. That without if you put together Rabbi Yossi and Shmuel and Shmuel and Rav and Kufay, then you're saying that there is an isser. There's a problem halachically to continue eating without making kiddush, not just a hitter. What's enough community? So I think the tremendous enough community is going to be in the shiloh we find in the Rif, that the Rif says Rif says, Amr Shmuel in Halacha, Rif Mamish in the beginning of the parak, second Amud, that Amud Amr Shmuel, sorry, in Halacha look, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Masik, Sudas of Oker, Shulchan, Mukadish, Vachar, Gomer Sudaso, look Rabbi Yossi, Damar Gomer Sudaso, Vachar, Mukadish, Ella Paris Mapo Mukadish, Vachar, Shari Hamotzi, Gomer Sudase, Mavar Perk Samazon. So the Rif is Mosif over here, one word which a lot of ink is spilled over, that according to Shmuel, that your Paris Mapo Mukadish, then when you go back to your Suda, you have to make a new Hamotzi. So I'm sure everybody saw the Balamor has a lot of problems with this. Balamor says, by the way, here's another place that says, if the Balamor says explicitly, once we're at it, it says, in halacha lo Rabbi Yehuda Damar.
Wouldn't that, if you have to bench, then what's the question of hamotzi? Then of course you have to make hamotzi.
Yeah, no,
we're
not, because we're not talking in Rabbi Yehuda, we're talking in Shmuel. So, of course, you're right. But he says, I'm saying that he says Rabbi Yehuda says Masiki and Bibrach Samazon. When he says Salkan Shulchan, he says Beferish that Rabbi Yehuda means Bibrach Samazon. V'lo Rabbi Yossi da'amar ein masikin klal, ela masikin b'prisas mapo mukadesh. Then the Balamor says v'chozer l'sudaso. V'lo tzarich l'mishra hamotzi kush kasav rif. You don't need to make a motzi like the Rif says. Da l'kivi hadar, because you're going back to your original kfiyas. You were kavel suda, and now you make kiddush in the middle. Now you're going right back to your original kfiyas suda. If you need a motzi, manashach. If you need a motzi for the new suda, for what you're doing now, if you consider it a new suda, so then you should need a berch samazon for the last suda. Shalom etzinu berch samazon achas l'shtei brachos shalom motzi. We don't find one berch samazon for two hamotzis. So he goes on to say, we'll see a sugya coming on later on. We have a sugya coming up that people are sitting eating a suda, and then they're akra gleim. They didn't leave any old people or anybody back, and they all go out to likras chasan, likras kala, or they go to shul, whatever. Then over there it says kashem yotzim tuna bracha l'mafreya. When they leave, they're supposed to bench first. Kashem chozer and tuna bracha l'chatchila. That makes sense. Then you make a new hamotzi when you come back. You bench first, then you can do motzi. Amashi shasid. So bracha l'mafreya, masha avar. You need a bracha from first a bench on what was before, and you need then a motzi on what's coming. The Suda Rishona, I saw Tzaka Gemura from Yehuda. If you want to say the Rif means you taka need a bench and then you make a new motzi, then that's you're back to Rabbi Yehuda again. We're saying the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Ain't a halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, then it ends off just a nakuda, which is important to know. Yes, before Shem Havasa Shulchan. The reason you bring the table is Kruve Taka, Keka the Nese Taka Biyaka de Shabsa. In order that you should take the table away and bring it back, not because of Hesek or benching, but because it should be brought back L'Chavod Shabbos. That's he's alluding to the Shita of the Shilta Star B'chai. It says this shot there, it should bring it L'Chavod Shabbos. It's more of a Chavod Shabbos to bring the table up for Shabbos. The other shatim are all shver. So that's the Balamor, and the Balamor has a taina on the Rif that where do you find one benching for multiple hamotzis? Where do you find such a thing? So the Rishonim all go to town on this Balamor. That what do you mean? We have many examples of this. For example, the Gemara in Chulin Daf Kuzayin says that a shamish is the Mahamas here brings it down that a shamish makes a bracha every time he give him another prusa, he has to make a new motzi because he's considered nimlach because he didn't know he's going to be fed anymore. Each time he gets another piece of bread, he has to make a new motzi. It's for Gemara, but we don't find that he has to bench every time. He only mentions once at the end. So you do find bracha achas of Birchas Hamazon for many hamotzis. Before Shvaya connected the Baal of course. Sorry?
Is it Rebbe?
I think you're on double. You're on twice.
No, that's fine. But isn't when we see the case by the Shamish where Nimlach Daito, here it's not Nimlach Daito. Everyone knows. What? Everyone knows he's going to have to make hamotzi again.
And
For
therefore,
Shabbos. Let me work on it. I'll later on. Sorry.
okay.
The noise messed me up.
Okay, so we have here a major machlokas between the Rif and the Balamor, which is which halacha l'maisa. We will see. Well, next time I'll give more makoms for that, but to see the Shulchan Aruch and see the tour basis of Shulchan Aruch, and then Mishnah Berurah and everything on this. But this shaila is comes out to be two shitas in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch himself actually paskins. The Beis Yosef goes by Rikus about it, like the Rif, that you do make a motzi, but it brings a yesh omrim like the Balamor that you don't have to make a new motzi. Two different shitas. So, but the shaila is, I'm sorry, no. 1 second, I'm making a mistake. I just misquoted that. I think I'm sorry, I take that back. He passes like the Rif. I don't have it open right now, but he has two shitas if you have to make a new, if you have to make a Brit Guffin for Kiddush if you were drinking wine before. That's where there's two shitas. Okay, we'll get to that. But the Shulchan Aruch actually does paskin like the Rif. But the question is that the Balamor says over here, there's a swore of the Kive Hadar. You're going back to the original Kviyas. So what's the new Kudas and Malchokos? How do we understand this Malchokos, the Rif and the Balamor? So number one, I would say that the whole question, if you have to make a new motzi or not, whether there's a hezek hadas over here, only begins if you hold like Tosfos. We originally said that there's a machlokas Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, and we pass like Rabbi Yossi, and now the shaila is Shmuel going like Rabbi Yossi or not? The Rashbam says it is, and it's just a chumrah in Rabbi Yossi, and Tosfos says that it is not, and it's we're not going like Rabbi Yossi, it's another shita, and there's a real isser, and it's going with this four of isser of Rav on Kufay. So the whole shaila of making a new motzi only begins if you hold not like the Rashbam. That's just to begin with. If you hold like the Rashbam, the halacha like Rabbi Yossi, Me'ikar Din, you're allowed to keep on eating. So then there's not even a shaila. If you want to be machmar yourself to make kiddush, there's not even a shaila if you have to make a motzi. Of course not. Your mama's in the middle of a suda, you're allowed to be eating. There's no chiyuv to make kiddush. But you wanted to make kiddush, you wanted to do something a little bit better. Then of course you're not going to make a motzi. So the shaila of the Rif begins only if you're holding like Tosfos to begin with, that there is an isser, and the shaila is going to be, does this isser that there is to continue eating without making kiddush, does that create enough of some kind of a hesach hadas to necessitate to make a new motzi or not? Does that make sense? Everybody understand that?
Just because you were porous mappa, you're saying, Rebbe's saying that would not, if no questions, would not require you to make a new motzi, even though there was kiddush.
Right. According to the Rashbam, you're just doing a nice thing. Like you don't have to do it. You're allowed to do it, but you're doing a nice thing of kiddush. There's not even a shaila you have to make a new motzi in this case.
So Rebbe's saying that the isser achila is what would make it nimlach.
Or we'll have to understand how that works. But yeah, but I'm just saying, if we take the two sides of the equation, so this whole discussion in the Rif and the Balamor only begins if we, if we say like Tosfos. I mean, and Shitzchiastic away, you could say perhaps maybe that isn't Machlokes Balamor and the Rif. Maybe that is one possibility. Maybe the Rif holds like Tosfos that it's an Isser, therefore automatically it creates an Isser, it has Chadas, and the Balamor holds like Rashbam that there's no Isser, there's no real Chiyuv to do it, and it's just a Milah. That's why the Kivi Hadar. It's not mashma so much that way from the Balamor though. I mean, just from the students of the Ram and the Balamor, it seems like they're talking to each other, they're talking at the same level. And it's a different Shala, it's a Sudadik Shala over here. And also the Balamor is one of those who disagreed with the Rashbam and said it's not a Liba Rav Yossi, it's a third Shita. Balamor said that previously himself. So it's mashma, we're not talking within the world of Rav Yossi over here, even according to the Balamor. So it seems to be a different mahalach and how to explain this. We have to explain this machlokes differently. So what I think is that, well, at least the Haschalas Hadvarim, I just want to, before going any further, just make a diuk also in the tour, like what we're saying. The tour, it's very interesting, the tour in Reish Ayin Aleph, Sif Daled. Where it says following. Also litam klum, after he says the din of Kiddush, also litam klum be'mayim be'yayin mishetechshach ad sheyikadesh. He just says the regular din, Shabbos comes in, you're not eating or anything like that. Shabbos comes in, you're not allowed to start eating anything or drinking anything, even water, until you make Kiddush. Va'afilu im hischel lechol mibod yom tzarich lahafsik. Not only if you weren't eating, even if you were eating during the day, still you have to be mafsik. Then he goes on to whether you have to be oker shulchan or not, and poras malcham mukadish. So the Torah puts the din of poras malcham mukadish in the context of the isra achila of when Shabbos comes in. If you're not eating anything, you're not allowed to start eating without kiddush. The Torah continues that on and brings down the din of poras malcham mukadish, which he's clearly telling us that we're dealing over here with an isra achila. The din of poras malcham mukadish is part and parcel with the regular din that you can't start eating on Shabbos without making kiddush, which that's clearly an isser. Yossi never said his din by someone who just Shabbos comes in, he wasn't eating anything, you can just start eating and make kiddush at the end. Even Yossi never said such a thing. Yossi only said as halacha if you're a hiska lechel and you're mamshich to eat, not starting to eat. So when the Torah puts that in the and also the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Torah and Shulchan Aruch put it in the context of the regular isra achila of Shabbos without making kiddush, they're clearly dealing over here not with a malusa or a hitter, they're dealing with an isser, which means that the psak halacha, the Rishonim were all going, the ruach of Rishonim was all with the mahalach of Tosas, not with that of the Rashbam. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a discussion about having to make a motzi or not. So that's just another diuk like that in the Torah. Just close the door, there's noisy out there. Right when the shock shows up, it starts getting noisy out there. Arguments begin. We all love Rabbi Shock. Okay, so we'll start with discussing something we find in a yesod that we see in the Gemara in Chulin. Issue over here is we have over here this Isra Achila, and there the Gemara is talking. Tosas brought this Gemara down. There's a shala over there in the Gemara, which in Pei Vavim Abayz, the Pei Zayin Amar Aleph, if a person is shechting and then they're doing kisui adam, if the kisui adam is a hefsek, or it's a hefsek between the birchas shchita and the bracha of kisui adam. So the Gemara over there says that it's Malchogos Tanoim, and do I assume everybody saw the sugya, or should I assume that everybody saw it? Did not see it. Okay, so then what I might do is then, pardon?
We did not see it.
So what I might do is then, to make this not too complicated, I was thinking about doing this anyway, just to put a few more sugyas on to really see this sugya from the way we should really see it properly. Because there's also, I don't know how far everybody went, how far you followed your 007, to look up everything about this. So the sugya there's another sugya in Hulin, and there's a more, and later on in Kuftes and Psachim about Dalakosas. I might just put that in the Marmacomas for next week, as we can see this properly. So I'm gonna just get a drink. I lost my voice.
Anyone catch where the sugya in Fulin is?
Pei Vav Amud Beis and Pei Zayin
Pei
Amud
Vav?
Aleph.
Yeah.
Pei Vav Amud Beis and Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, I think. That's what he said. 86b.
Did anyone else see it?
No,
No, we
we
didn't.
we made it as far as like we were about to start the Rambam. That was as far as we got.
Was it? I don't remember it being on the Marmakoma. Was it?
I think he said Tosos quoted it, but I'm trying to see which Tosos was. I remember a Tosos quoted Tisuk Adam.
I think it was quick. Quick days.
I just want you a guest to say good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
It's noisy here also when Rabbi the Shak shows up.
It's always noisy when Rabbi Lashak shows up because he brings the fiesta and the siesta.
You don't know the difference. We don't speak the language. Shabbat Shalom.
I'm so proud of all of you. All of you are unbelievable. I'm so proud of all of you. Continue to inspire the world.
Thank you. Amen.
Close the door. Okay.
Which Tosfos was Rebbe referring to that is referencing the Gemara in Chulin? What was the Dibur Maschil?
There are a few different sugyas here that all tie together, so it might actually have been Kuf Gimel. To really see this sugya properly, I'm going to have to give the whole, maybe another set of Marmakomos, which we'll get really the whole hekif in. This is just the beginning of what we're seeing now. It's the bottom of Kuf Gimel and Beis. So, actually, no, it's not. What the quotes a different Gemara there. 1 second. Where is the quote at?
Oh, below he v'chule.
And it was. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Now where? Let's see. At this point, it's not a. I'm seeing it right now. The Ramban talks about it. There's a Tosfos. I just have to remember where it is.
Mine kept breaking.
There's a Tosos on Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, the Akru Ragleim. That quotes Perki Suyadam. I didn't do it. I just saw it right now.
Which one?
Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, V'akru, it's the second to last Tosos. So middle of Tosos, he quotes Mashevi. Mashevi. Kifi Adam.
That's one of the places. So, which Tosos over there references back to that Gemara as well. Kufay's. Yeah, I mean the good thing and the problem with this parak is that it's like one big sugya that are like it's like 7 daf long. So everything's tied together. So one thing is like the mile of learning Arbi Psachim the first time is in order that the second time shouldn't be the first time. They really know what's going on. So but you do our best to sort of pick up another piece and then start us all piecing together. So we'll. It's beautiful the way Kiddush and Havdalah come out of it, but it's such an incredible foundation. So I'll just take one Nakud out of there right now, and then we'll put it in Marmakomos next week. I'm going to send out probably today the Marmakomos.
Our focus in the halach is the halachas of Kiddush now.
Sorry?
Is our focus right now is the halachas of Kiddush? Is that the sugya that we're zeroing in on now?
Right, Kiddush. This is Kiddush. It's just interesting that through Hilchos Kiddush, there's a lot of Hilchos Suda as well, because the two tie together in many ways. We'll see as we go along also, as far as like the dinim of Hefsek and Suda will be similar to Hefsek or Shinui Makom for Suda will be, well, then they'll see how does that relate to Kiddush or vice versa. There's a lot of things that Hilchos Suda and Kiddush tie together as we go along. So there's a lot of crossover between Mesechus Brachos and Arbi Psachim in Hilchos Suda back to over here. Okay. Yes. Yes. Remind me. Just a little public share. Here for how long are you going to be? Just 1 second, guys. Somebody just shocked me.
Shane and Malchus must be serious.
Okay, I'll see if perhaps I'll be back later. I'm going to be leaving. I have my wife here. I'm gone, so we'll see. I may be.
I missed what Brother Steve said. I'm gonna have to watch it on YouTube just to get the hack and what's going on.
Tosus over there brings down and Pei Zion and Chulin, and we'll give this down so you can see everything inside. So we won't miss all this here just for me. But the Gemara over there basically comes to a maskana that in order to the reason that if you the difference the more of this, I'll try to sum it up for you, just sort of contrast over there. If you are sitting in a suda and you say Hablan v'nivrech, let's bench, or they say Ribasai Nivrech, let's bench, and then you decide, you know what, I want to drink something more. So there, it's considered a hesach hadas, and you need to make a new bracha. Masha'en can, if you will be shechting, and then you do kisui adam, even though kisui adam is a gemar, because Havil Nivrech, let's bench, that's a gemara of eating. That's you're showing your Masiach das from eating. So Hora Kisui Dam is also a Hesach das from Shechting. We say you don't have to make a new Birchas Shechita. Why not? So the Gemara says that when you say Habam V'Nivrich, Itzoleh L'Mishtei Chamra, you can't. It's also to drink anymore to make a new bracha. Here we say that part of the reason is because you can't bench. If you say Habam V'Nivrich, which your intention is to bench, nobody can bench and drink at the same time. So there's a swore of Efshar, which all the Rishonim take out of this. For one thing to be Mesiach Das, and the other is the thing you're about to do, you can't do the first thing while you're doing the second thing. There's no way I could bench and keep on drinking at the same time. It's possible here to you could theoretically you could shech with one hand and you could do kisui dam with the other hand. So there's no swore of EF shar by those two. So therefore, it's not considered a complete hesach hadas. That's what the Gemara says over there. So Tosas brings over there based on this Gemara.
Let me just to clarify, the hesach hadas in question is because you're making a bracha. Like, is that what the Berachas Hamazon is, the hesach hadas, or is it? I mean, why would what's the havamina that kisui adam should be a hesach hadas?
Because kisui adam is the Gemara of shchita. The Gemara, when you do the kisui adam, when you're done shechting. So like it shows it's like a Maisa Gemara of.
We must be talking about two animals, just to clarify the case. You can't do kisui adam before you do shchita, or am I just mixing up? Right.
Right.
So it's not the Gemara of that shchita, but it's a Gemara of a shchita. So I think Rabbi Stam may be asking, how is that a hesach hadas for this shchita that you're about to do?
Yeah, so that's what the Gemara is discussing over there. That over here that says that again. I want to. It's a whole sugya, which I'll let you see that, and then we'll come back to it. I'm just trying to. So but the shaila will be why is it not hesach hadas for the next shchita? That's what the Gemara is discussing. So it says that it's possible, since it's possible to do both. Machasa here and shech over here, so then got to be a good shochet.
Okay, it's just to educate me because I don't know. So typically, a shochet would make one bracha and then that would cover.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the question is why? If you're doing kisui down in the middle, if you would be, then.
Okay.
So based on this Gemara, so this idea of EF shar, so Tosas brings down the Rebbeinu Yom Tov, which is actually the same shita that somebody pointed out in Kupes and Bayos. The Rebbeinu Yom Tov holds that if you get up in the middle of a Suda to daven, then you should have to make a new bracha, a new amotzi, because it's not possible to daven and eat at the same time. Sometimes we see people doing that, but it's not really possible. A lot of people, you see them davening with their cup of coffee, isn't that? I see it sometimes. So it says that's EF shar. And therefore, you should make a new bracha if you daven and then come back to your suda. So Tosa says no. He's cholik on that. He says, "Vein nira, the lo dami klal mishum dehacha havel v'nivrich have gamar davar have hefsek chen kisui ilad the efshar b'hadi adadi." You need Tosa saying you need two things. And lashon ataz you need tarti. You need two. The two reasons, a combination of two reasons to be hesach hadas. Number one is that it's EF shar, like the Gemara says, and number two, it has to be dumia to kisui adam or to havel v'nivrich. Besides the fact that it's EF shar, it's also a gemara what you did before. When I say I'm benching, or when I do bench, then there's no question that it's a complete gemara of the achila that was there before. There's no einlecha gemara gadol is there. And kisui also, if not for the fact the Gemara is saying that it was efshar to do both together, it also we considered a gemara. The only reason it's a gemara, but you're missing the other factor. So you need a combination of efshar and gemara in order to be a total hesach hadas to have to make a new bracha. That's what Yisod Tosas says over there. So now we have to discuss the question coming back to our sugya. That do we have both aspects in our sugya to be able to make a new bracha? What's the pshat in the rif? Do we have this or not? So the Baal Mor holds that says we don't have it. The Baal Mor for some reason says that it's just l'kivi hada. You're going back to your same kviyas. You didn't have enough reason over here for hesach hadas. The rif holds that there is. There's a reason to do that. So we're getting out of time. I can't believe how long this took. But I just want to put a chakira out there. We'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll talk more next time. We'll get more mama comments. We'll talk about it next time. So that put the shala out here. That the isser, we're assuming that there's an isser over here of achila, like we saw from the lesson of tour. It puts it together, it juxtaposes it together in the same halacha with a general isser of achila without kiddush on Leil Shabbos. So the same isser over applies according to this shita of Poras Mapa Mukadosh. They were not allowed to eat. How do we understand this isser? Is it when Chazal said that it's the context of how to how did Chazal say this? When Chazal created this Isser, which it's an Isser that they created to eat before Kiddush, did they create an Isser Achila that they made it like this Suda is a Suda Asura right now? The Suda itself is also, there's an Isser Achila on this Suda before you make Kiddush. Or did they put it in the category of those things that it's usher on the Gavra to do? You have a certain mitzvah you're supposed to do, not to start sitting and eating when you, and become mitzvahs. The Gia, it's a zilzal in the mitzvah, when you're supposed to be performing this mitzvah, and you continue doing your own thing. So it's not really an Isra Achila per se, it's more a zilzal mitzad the Kiddush. Now, even if it is, I'll give you a dugma of the davar. I'll give you an example. Actually, the example might take quite a while. I'll give you an example, but it's a long example. I'll just throw this out to you, and then we'll talk more about this next time because we're really out of time. That what I want to offer, possibly, and we'll see if this is going to work or not, but what I want to offer is that if you say that, assuming that both the Balamor and the Rif hold that there is an Isser, not like the Rashbam, like where we've been dying in the Balamor. So the Isser, the Machlok is not if you hold like the Rashbam or not. It's all within the Surah of Isser. So it depends on how you look at that Isser. Is the Isser, like we're saying, is it, if it's an Isser Achila, so then that makes it that the Isser itself is Gomer, the Achila that I'm doing, because the Isser creates a matzav, even though I didn't say Havan V'Nivrich, whatever, but the Isser creates what Havan V'Nivrich creates. It creates a Gemar to the Suda that I was eating before. Since I'm not allowed to eat, it's mamish usher for me to eat, the Isser Achila itself creates a Gemar for the Achila. So but that together with the fact that I can't make Kiddush while I'm still eating, so there's an Iyashar and there's a Gemar, then I have both ingredients to create a Hesach Hadas. Masha'en can, if you hold that there's not really an Isra Achila Mitzad Etzem Achila itself, just that I am not allowed to eat. It's a pasnish, it's not proper for the Kiddush. It's a zilzal in the Kiddush for me to eat before Kiddush, but it's not really an Isra Achila per se. So then you could say that, okay, I have Kiddush to do. There is no Gemara over here. There's no Isra on the Etzem Suda. Just I'm not supposed to eat until I make Kiddush. So the Kiddush is like in the way of me continuing my Suda. So once I make the Kiddush, then I'm allowed to, then whatever's Monday on me goes away. So now I can continue with the same Suda before. I'm missing if there's no Isra Achila, then there's no factor over here of a Gemar. Like Tosfos says, you need a Gemar. Besides the fact that it's Yeshar, you need a Gemar for what was. So perhaps that's going to be the Machlokes of Balamor and the Rif, that the Rif holds that the Isra Achila is an Isra Achila Mamish. It's an Isra on the Suda. And so that creates a Gemar, and therefore I need a new Motzi. Whereas the Balamor says the Lashon, look carefully in the Balamor, he says, what do you mean? You make Kiddush, now the Kivi Hadar, you go back to your same Kviyas. There was never a Hefsek in the original Kviyas, because there was never a Gemar to that Kviyas, the fact that you have to make Kiddush. Because the fact that you have to make Kiddush and you're not allowed to eat as a side problem, Klape the Etzem Suda. And therefore, you're missing the two categories that the Gemara in Chulin says that you need, based on Tosfos over there. You need a combination of Efshar and a Gemar for what there was. So I'm putting that out there as a possible explanation, but we'll continue this next time. I'll give more Mama comes to see, because we're going to see that there might be riots to this, but also might be kashas on this. Shot.
The Balamor says that, no? The covered Shabbos. Or covered, yeah, he said that's why he Paris Mappa, no?
Covered Shabbos, but he says the Kive Hadar, you're going back to the same Kviyas. It's basically the same Kviyas as before.
I think the Rosh spoke that out, no?
Pardon?
Didn't the Rosh speak that out? Rosh spoke out that you had to have like two factors in order to make that hefsek. Like it had to be also that there was the Isra Achila and that the guy actually did Kiddush.
Right. So the Rosh, I quoted the Tosfos over there, but the makor for that Rosh. But you're right, the Rosh talks about it as well. So the question is, that's the question over here: do you have both factors or not? And that depends on the Shala, whether we have an Isra Achila, and therefore you have a hefsek, you have a Gemar, because the Isra itself stops you from being able to eat. Just like I can't eat, start eating on Kiddush, I also can't continue the Suda. Or it's just, the Suda is not a problem. It's just, I need to make Kiddush before I continue eating. It's not nice. It's not proper for Kiddush to go keep eating when I'm supposed to make Kiddush.
So we're saying that that's the Etzem Machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and now Shmuel as well.
That I'm not saying. I'm saying that would be Machlokas with the Rif and the Balamor in accordance with and in Shmuel's din, that they're holding that there is an Isser, but it's not. What's the level? What's the getter? What's the definition of that Isser?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll see more of the Marmakomos.
Yeah. So
Could Rabbi,
we'll continue on this.
would Rabbi mind giving us the Marmakomos now? Like, we'll advance.
Yeah, I was planning to send them out soon. I'll just write it up and send it out. I have to put it onto the thing and send it to Joseph. Then send it to all of you.
Is the main? I mean, Chulin, I assume is
But
one
just
of
to
them.
tell, yeah. Well, there's going to be. I just want to put it in an orderly way. So, but you can start with that Gemara and Chulin for sure. It's the Mishnah and Pei Vav Amud Beis going to the next Mishnah and Pei Zayin Amud Aleph. And for the full picture, you would see Tosas Asur L'Chul Mishti and Tosas Mishte Bruchi. Those two Tosas, and the last Tosas on Pei Vav Amud Beis, and the first one on Pei Zayin Amud Aleph. Let's start with that. That'll give a lot of insight in this. Okay, to be continued. Mr. Shem.
Thank you. Happy Shabbos.
Shabbos.